Hollywood is known for its tales of spectacular downfalls. Few of these stories are as poignant as that of mystery-solving heartthrob Scooby-Doo. After starring in the Scooby-Doo show, Scooby fell into a dark battle with addiction. In 1979, Scooby got behind the wheel with on-again, off-again girlfriend Velma Dinkley while under the influence of a number of drugs. He lost control of the car, striking a tree, killing Dinkley on impact. Scooby was arrested and charged with vehicular homicide, but got off on a legal technicality. Since then, Scooby has been arrested several more times on drug charges and is currently out on parole. In the next 5 minutes, we will walk a mile in Scooby's shoes. He was a star with legions of fans.
I'm on the cover of all these magazines.
And a fast and loose lifestyle. We will retrace Scooby's path through the mystery-solving jungle that include bankruptcy, addiction, and countless run-ins with the law. This is Scooby-Doo's true Hollywood story. Scooby's life started in conflict. He was born in 1968 to husband and wife Sandy and Stanley Doo, 2 toy poodles. When Scooby was delivered, Stanley immediately suspected infidelity and after 2 weeks walked out on the new family. While the identity of Scooby's biological father remains a mystery, it has been suspected that it was either a stray Great Dane or Hollywood hunk Burt Reynolds. Unable to care for her new son, Sandy gave him up for adoption, where he was put into foster care.
They were awful. They wouldn't let me sleep on the bed. They made me eat mushy dog food. They'd rub my belly when I didn't want them to. Then I don't want to talk about it.
Scooby was eventually saved from foster care by Shaggy Rogers.
I really wanted to get a rescue dog. I walked in, I saw him. He was the cutest thing you'd ever seen, but you could just see the pain in his eyes. I adopted him immediately and brought him home with me that day. I think he ate all my food.
I literally ate everything.
Shaggy, grandson of famous detective Sherlock Holmes, had recently been hired by a television channel to be one of 4 members of a mystery-solving crew. The first day of filming, Shaggy brought Scooby with him.
I couldn't leave him home alone. He wasn't potty trained, so I just brought him with me and let him wander around the set.
While exploring the set, I found a box of what I thought were delicious snack bites. So obviously I scarfed down the entire box.
What Scooby didn't know was that that box actually contained cookies laced with methamphetamine that belonged to another star on the show.
That asshole stole all my meth. That was the single best eating experience of my entire life. I would do anything to get more of those snacks.
Noticing the effect the cookies had on Scooby, the show's producer had an idea to add Scooby to the show. He approached Shaggy and asked how he felt, leaving out the ingredients of the cookie.
I saw how happy the cookies made him, and he really seemed like he wanted to work on the show. I couldn't say no. I had no idea what they were doing.
And with that, Scooby became the 5th member of the mystery crew. After several months of filming, the show aired on September 16, 1969, and was an immediate success. Scooby and the gang became overnight stars.
Walking down Ventura Boulevard, everyone would be pointing at me, screaming my name. They'd run across the traffic just to come and pet me. I mean, I was the most famous dog since that asshole Old Yeller died of rabies.
Even secondary characters were getting in on the action.
Yeah, man, that show changed my life. After it aired, every time I'd spook someone, they'd be like, "Hey, are you that ghost on Scooby-Doo?" We would just have the best laugh ever.
Scooby loved the attention. In his spare time, he would date other Hollywood starlets like Diane Keaton, Faye Dunaway, and his co-star, Velma Dinkley.
Whenever I was around, he always made me feel like I was the only one, but I know differently. No, he always had, oh my gosh, he was always popular with the gals.
With the fame, Scooby's party lifestyle was getting out of hand, and his meth addiction had expanded to a plethora of other drugs. He became more difficult to work with on the show.
He couldn't do anything when he didn't take his Scooby snacks. When he didn't eat them, he would shake violently. He said he was shivering because he was scared, and I believed him. I thought that they made him feel better. I thought they made him courageous, so I just kept giving them to him. giving him those damn cookies.
After several physical altercations with cast and crew and missing a number of filming sessions for the show, Scooby was walking on thin ice. One day, Velma showed up to film with a black eye. When Shaggy went to confront Scooby on what happened, he found Scooby lying on the ground surrounded by boxes of Scooby snacks and foaming from the mouth. He had overdosed.
I still remember that day perfectly. I carried him from the floor to the Mystery Mobile, and I had him in my lap the entire way there. At some point, his heart stopped, and I just... No, listen, like, we have to stop. Just we have to put it down. I brought him to the vet, and that's where they stabilized him by putting him in medically induced coma. That's when the vet told me what happened, that he'd overdosed, and I put 2 and 2 together, and I figured out what happened.
Shaggy quit the show that day and filed charges against the producer of the show. With the show's producer in jail, one of the stars quitting, and the other one the vet, after overdosing on meth, the network decided to cancel the show. It had been on air for only 2 seasons. Scooby woke up from his coma to a new reality.
I had lost everything, except my best friend Shaggy.
Over the next several years, Scooby struggled with his addiction before going clean in 1976 after several failed stints in rehab. After being sober for 2 years, he convinced the gang to get back together and tried to get the show renewed for a 3rd season. It was an uphill battle, but a studio finally okayed the project, and on September 9th, 1978, the show was back on air. However, it didn't last long.
He was back in the same environment that he became an addict in the first place. All the fame, fortune, he couldn't handle it.
I couldn't handle my life, and I thought if I just took one Scooby snack, it could take the edge off. I couldn't handle it.
Scooby fell back into his old ways, partying 24 hours a day and taking more drugs than Keith Richards. The show was canceled halfway through the season after Scooby stopped coming to film. Shortly after, Scooby was out celebrating his birthday with Hollywood's elite and decided to drive home with then-girlfriend Velma Dinkley. They never made it back. Scooby lost control of his vehicle and hit a tree on the passenger side. Velma died instantly.
The last thing I remember was leaving the club, then waking up in the hospital.
Scooby was charged with vehicular homicide. He pled not guilty despite the evidence against him. However, right before the case was to go to trial, the blood test proving he was intoxicated while driving mysteriously went missing. Without this key piece of evidence, the prosecution was forced to withdraw the case against Scooby. The mystery of the missing evidence was never solved. After he was released from jail, Scooby stayed out of the spotlight and moved in with longtime friend Shaggy. However, even though he was no longer filming the show, he still had problems with addiction and run-ins with the law.
I still have nightmares about the crash. I hear her scream. I see her face. The drugs help, but I know what it does to Shaggy to see me fall.
I see him kicking and whimpering at night, and I just pet him until he calms back down.
When asked why he continues to support Scooby, Shaggy had this to say.
Scooby was never given a fair shot. From the moment that he was born, he was abused and beaten, and then when you added drugs to the equation, he had no chance. I want to give him that chance to be happy. He deserves that.
Today, Shaggy and Scooby live together in a small home in Colorado. Scooby continues to struggle with his demons, but with continued support from Shaggy, as well as regular fetch therapy sessions, things have started looking better.
My life has been a roller coaster of amazing highs and crippling lows. But for the first time in my life, I feel like things are gonna be okay.